What's going on, everyone? GoodMicWork Commentaries back at you with a retro Royal Rumble pay-per-view review. It's that time of year again. We've got Royal Rumble coming up right around the corner, and generally every year I try to come up and do at least one or two reviews talking about previous Royal Rumble pay-per-views that I really enjoyed. And this year, I chose to do Royal Rumble 2000. I guess technically I should have waited until next year so I can do a big 20-year anniversary review of this show, but I really wanted to do this one. It's just a pay-per-view that I really enjoyed and I thought was just a great atmosphere and a great night for WWE. And ironically, the Royal Rumble match itself is not one of my favorites ever, not even close, but the Royal Rumble pay-per-view as a whole I thought was a lot of fun. So we're going to have a good time talking about this show that took place 19 years ago. My God, I am getting old. But before we dive in to the Royal Rumble, I want to just let you guys know a couple of things. First, please click that subscribe button if you have not yet already. Give that like button a smash too. Let's try to get these likes up to at least 200 or 300. Somewhere in that neighborhood, I would really appreciate that. If you don't have time to sit and watch this YouTube video, then you can download this podcast episode over on my website, GoodMicWorkCommentaries.com. You can also catch me over on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, or Spotify. If you would like to support the channel in any way, links to do so are in the description below. I've got some great merchandise available over at ProWrestlingTees.com. You can support on Patreon, donate on PayPal, all that kind of stuff. All of that information is down below, and that description is loaded with all sorts of goodies, including a lot of links to other retro reviews I have done, and also there's a bunch of videos right up there in the top right-hand corner of the screen. But today we're going to discuss one of my favorite pay-per-views from the Attitude Era. Royal Rumble 2000 goes down on January 23rd of that year from Madison Square Garden, and one of my favorite all-time pay-per-view sets that they've ever done. It was very simple, wasn't elaborate at all. Back in the day in Madison Square Garden, they always had that really short aisleway. They had that short aisleway for WrestleMania 10 and SummerSlam 98 and a whole bunch of other shows and pay-per-views that have taken place in Madison Square Garden. The setup of it is always different than what we're used to seeing from WWE. And this particular set I just thought was really cool. It kind of had this look of being on the streets of New York City. There was even a taxi cab hanging over the entrance aisleway there, which was just a really cool vibe, really cool feel. The atmosphere was off the hook. The crowd was jacked right from the word go. Of course, we had Jerry the King Lawler and Jim Ross calling this show, and the show opens up with Kurt Angle. Now, Kurt Angle was booked to have a mystery partner at the Royal Rumble. Kurt Angle comes out first, and the minute his music hit, the crowd just popped with excitement because they knew what was coming. I remember this very well back then. The dirt sheets, the Observer, the hotlines, everybody was reporting that Taz had signed with WWE. This was not going to be a surprise. The minute that they announced Kurt Angle was going to face a mystery opponent, we knew who it was going to be. And MSG, New York City, was the perfect place to debut Taz, and the crowd knew it. And Angle comes out to the ring. He cuts a typical heel promo, shits all over the New York Knicks, and awaits his mystery opponent to come out, and then the big 13 flashes on the screen. And don't forget, Taz had not even debuted yet. Nobody knew what his theme music was going to sound like, but the minute that number 13 flashed on the screen and it started pulsing, the crowd just exploded. One of the loudest MSG pops I've ever heard. It rivals, might not be greater than, but it definitely rivals the ovation that Triple H got in 2002 when he returned on Monday Night Raw in that very same building. I mean, the crowd went nuts. Now, granted, this did open the show. The crowd is always jacked for the opening match, but just to see Taz come out there was a thing of beauty, and it was really the only great moment in Taz's WWE career. Because when he was lured away from ECW, I thought Taz was going to be the shit. I thought he was going to contend for the world title right out of the gate. And a couple things we'll talk about here in a minute kind of led to his downfall. But for this night and his debut night, one of my favorite debuts of all time. Now, the match was nothing that special. Once he's finally in the ring and the crowd settles just a little bit, the two start brawling. But Kurt Angle shuts the crowd down pretty quick with a belly-to-belly suplex on the floor onto Taz. But eventually Taz gets up from that. They find themselves back in the ring. The match, well, I think it only went about 3 or 4 minutes, maybe max. Taz beats up on Kurt Angle some more. Kurt had a little bit of offense, but in the end, Taz locks him in the chokehold, the Taz mission, and Kurt Angle passes out. The whole time, the announcers are speculating whether or not it's a sleeper or a choke, and Kurt, up until this point, was undefeated in WWE, so this was going to be his first loss, and it was a hell of a way for Taz to come into the WWE, especially after what we would see Kurt Angle do later on in his career, becoming one of the most decorated WWE champions in history. And this was before Kurt Angle won any titles. I think it was the the next month when he won the Intercontinental and the European title, and he would be a dual champion. But before any of that happened, he had to job to Taz first. And the way he came in, defeating Kurt Angle like that, I thought was going to lead to big things for Taz on the roster. But it would only be 1 week later. It would be 8 days later on January 31st on Monday Night Raw that the entire group of the Radicals would debut on Raw. Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, Eddie Guerrero, and Dean Malenko. And I think when WWE got their hands on those guys, Taz became secondary. So Taz really suffered. I've said this for years. I always trace back Taz's failure in WWE to the Radicals coming in. Now, WWE still may not have pushed Taz to the moon or anything like that. He may have never even become a world champion in the company, but I still think he would have been a lot better off than what he was, because Taz never reached any sort of heights in WWE. I don't believe he even held any titles aside from maybe a hardcore run, which everybody got a run with the hardcore belt back then. Had Eddie, Chris, and Dean not come in, you may have seen Taz wrestle for the Intercontinental title at WrestleMania instead of Chris Benoit. You never know. So I think Taz's career would have been much different in the WWE if 8 days later 4 guys would not have stolen his thunder. So kind of a shame the way Taz turned out in WWE, but hey, it is what it is. And still looking back, regardless of what a failure Taz's wrestling career was in WWE, he did turn out to be a pretty good announcer, and I always liked Taz on the mic. But I always felt bad for him too because of all this stuff, and I never really felt like he lived up to even close to what his potential could have been in the WWE. But it still holds up well. You go back and look at this match, watch how excited the crowd was to see a big-time ECW star come into the company. WWE was hammering WCW into the ground. They were clearly winning the war, and WCW was only about a year away from going out of business completely. So everybody is going to choose the WWE first, and Taz came over, and it was a great moment for his career, one of the very few that he ever had in WWE. Next up, we had a really awesome match between the Hardy Boys and the Dudley Boys. This was a tables match, another perfect match to have in this Madison Square Garden setting. Now, the Hardys kind of got on the map a couple of months prior to this at No Mercy when they took on Edge and Christian in that ladder match and really got the entire wrestling world to take notice of them, and now the push was on. And I remember thinking the Hardy Boys were kind of underdogs here. Now, the Dudley Boys had just recently come into the company as well, just a few months prior to this, but they really weren't the Dudley Boys that we would grow to love at this point. They were still kind of new. Some WWE people weren't sure if they were going to make it in the company, and now they're put in this match in New York City, a couple of ECW guys who are used to wrestling that hardcore style, having a pay-per-view tables match against the Hardy Boys in this building, in this environment, in this setting. I thought for sure it was going to be the ECW guys all the way. But no, Jeff Hardy and Matt Hardy wound up winning this match in a really fun couple of spots. One of my favorite spots of the match was very early on, and they had Devon on the outside of the ring. He was laid across a table. Matt was up on the top rope. Matt jumps off. Devon moves out of the way. Matt crashes on the table, but where Devon moved was right in front of another table, and here comes Jeff Hardy out of nowhere, suicide dive through the ropes. Devon moves a second time, and Jeff crashes through the table. So technically, I thought the Dudley Boys should have won right there. But I guess the rules are for this match that you have to be driven through a table, not just go through a table. But right there in about 3 seconds, both Hardys slammed through tables. We saw all sorts of brawling all over the arena. They went to the opposite side of the aisleway on the other side of the ring from where the taxi cab was hanging into that balcony area. And after Bubba winds up going through a table, leaving only Devon left, they're brawling all up on the balcony. Bubba goes through a second table. He had already gone through one, I think in the ring or on the outside of the ring or something. So now he falls off the balcony and crashes through about 4 tables onto the ground. And Jeff Hardy is still up there. So Matt Hardy grabs Devon, because they still need to put Devon through a table, lays him on a table. Jeff Hardy is up on top of that balcony, and the great over-the-shoulder camera shot there right before he dives off for the Swanton bomb, right onto Devon, off the balcony. Great fucking spot. The crowd popped hard. Bell rings. Hardy Boys are your winners. And I remember being surprised about that at the time. I just thought where they were in the company, they would put the Dudleys over in this situation. But the crowd, even the New York City crowd, didn't care. They popped for this. They marked out. Nobody was all pissed off that ECW hardcore guys lost in New York City. Nobody cared. The match was great. It was fun. And this would be just another part of the build of what would be a great series of matches between the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Dudley Boys. So the Hardys beat Edge and Christian in the ladder match at No Mercy. Now they're beating the Dudley Boys in a tables match at Royal Rumble, but that would pretty much be the end of it because Edge and Christian would own every other match that these teams would be involved in moving forward. But still, looking back on this tables match, it was fun to watch, man. I mean, 19 years later, still holds up as a really entertaining match, especially when you realize how in their prime these two teams were. A lot of fun. Next up is something that does not age so well. Very typical WWE thing, very typical Attitude Era thing to do back in these days. We gotta have a bikini contest, right? It wouldn't be a WWE Attitude Era pay-per-view without it. This one is called the Miss Royal Rumble contest. Now, they had some really interesting judges for this thing. They actually brought out a panel of judges, including WWE Hall of Famer Sergeant Slaughter. We had Tony Gurria there, Fabulous Moolah, Johnny V, who just came out dressed. You wouldn't even recognize him. If you saw that guy in a restaurant, you would not even realize that that's Luscious Johnny. And Freddie Blassie also comes out there as well, and a celebrity guest judge in Andy Richter from the Conan O'Brien Show. And of course, you cannot have a bikini contest without Jerry the King Lawler hosting this thing, and it was absolutely ridiculous. Your contestants for this crazy contest were, get this, Luna Vachon, Terry Runnels, Ivory, Jacqueline, Miss Kitty, and BB. I had almost forgotten about BB. They all come out there individually, and they're all wearing robes, and then they one by one reveal their bikinis. And I think the funniest one was with Jacqueline when she took off her robe to reveal her crazy-ass bikini, and then you see the king kind of doing a little dance and bouncing around. He was having a great time out there. They were doing the thing with Ivory where she was not really into this. I think this would be shortly before the right to censor would form, but she was not happy about being out there. Didn't even do any sexy poses, just kind of reluctantly ripped off her robe and let everybody look at her body, and she seemed pissed off during the whole thing. And then, of course, the best and most crowd-pleasing bikini came from the Cat, or Miss Kitty, or whatever the hell they were calling her back then. She takes off her robe to reveal a bubble wrap bikini. She had this little tiny bikini on, made completely out of bubble wrap, and it was just at the pay-per-view previously, I believe, in Armageddon 1999, where she actually showed her tits on TV. She actually took off her top, and it wasn't censored or anything. I still have the original broadcast completely uncensored in my collection, and I remember even when that happened, I was like, man, WWE, you are really pushing the boundaries here. So I thought we were going to see something crazy, and one of these women were going to get completely naked, but we never saw Miss Kitty's puppies completely exposed. But don't worry, we had a savior on the way out to the ring. The music hits, and out comes Mae Young. We have a late entry into the Miss Royal Rumble 2000 bikini contest. Turns out to be Mae Young, and she says that she wants to show everyone her puppies, and she takes off her robe to reveal a one-piece bathing suit. She's dancing around, and then she starts undoing the straps and takes down the whole thing. You know, on the WWE Network, which is where I was watching this to make notes for this this review, but I have the original version, and they do not censor it out. She is full on. I think Mae Young, I can't believe I'm even talking about this. This is so fucking disgusting. But I think Mae Young actually had pasties on. If you look closely, you wouldn't want to, but when I've looked closely at the replay on the uncensored version, it looks like she's got something covering her up, but she's completely shirtless. She takes down her top. Mark Henry runs out there with a jacket or a towel or something, and the look on his face was so funny. Mark Henry was laughing his ass off at Mae Young, the way she was dancing around. He couldn't even contain himself. And I think Mae Young even breaks away from him at one point to show her puppies some more to the very lucky Madison Square Garden crowd. And my God, one of the funniest fucking things, you know, I'm not really a fan of, you know, how WWE really portrayed the women back then. It was just so ridiculous. But this was just funny. Mae Young seems like every time she was out there, she had a great time, and it was comedy, and it was fun, and it was definitely shocking. I'm not even sure if the other contestants knew what was going to happen, because when you look at the looks on BB's face or Miss Kitty's face, they are like dying. They cannot believe what they're seeing. And Mae Young, after she gives us her delicious striptease, all of the judges, for some reason, I don't know what they're smoking, they unanimously declare that Mae Young is the winner, and she is Miss Royal Rumble 2000. Holy shit. I still am traumatized from going back and looking at that. But moving on to the Intercontinental title match. This was a triple threat match between Chris Jericho, Chyna, and Bob Holly. Chris Jericho and Chyna were co-champions back at this point. Remember that? One of my least favorite things WWE has ever done. Plus, Jericho was new onto the scene in WWE. I really wanted to see him be a big star, not only in the company, but on that Intercontinental title level. I thought that was just a perfect place for him, and I was so happy when he won the Intercontinental title, but really bummed out that he had to share it with China. I just think if they want to make China an Intercontinental champion, great, do that. Don't make her co-hold it with anyone. I just thought that was so stupid. And after she beat Jeff Jarrett for the title, they did the thing with her and Jericho where there was a tie and then they were co-champions. And this was ridiculous. Now we got a triple threat match with Bob Holly involved, and it's winner take all. Whoever wins this match is going to walk out as the sole Intercontinental champion. And Jericho did win. Pretty good little match, but not very long. Not very memorable match either. But Jericho did win with a lion salt on China, gets the 1, 2, 3, and now he is the sole Intercontinental champion. And I was so happy that that whole debacle with the co-champions was over. I do believe Chris Jericho would go on to drop that to Kurt Angle. If I'm not mistaken, it may be the next pay-per-view or something like that. But despite the relatively short reign by Jericho, I was still really happy that he walked out of this match as the Intercontinental champion. We then cut backstage to a Rock promo with Michael Cole. Those are always fun. Michael Cole is asking The Rock his strategy and what his thoughts are on tonight's Royal Rumble match. And Rock said that he's very worried about the Royal Rumble match because of two people specifically. And those two people are Crash Holly and Headbanger Mosh. And Rock says that if he can get past those two, then maybe, just maybe, he has a chance to win the Royal Rumble match. So I thought that was pretty funny. We then go back to the ring for a tag team title match. The New Age Outlaws defending against the Acolytes. Much like the Intercontinental title match, nothing really noteworthy or memorable in this match. It didn't go very long. I think maybe 5 minutes. The Outlaws retained when they had some help from X-Pac. X-Pac hit the ring when the referee was out of commission, threw a couple of kicks onto Bradshaw, and he got hit with a Famouser when the ref came to, and the Outlaws stole a victory. It would then be time for what is, for me personally, my favorite Royal Rumble title match of all time, Triple H defending the WWE title against Cactus Jack. The backstory on this was really interesting, and I really love the build to this match. Now, the behind-the-scenes story on this is that Stone Cold Steve Austin, when he got hurt, was a really big blow to WWE, and Mick Foley had already kind of decided to retire, and he was going to hang him up because his body had taken so much abuse. But I guess Vince McMahon went to Foley, or WWE went to Foley, and asked him to do this one final program with Triple H, this title program or title feud that will take them through a few pay-per-views in order to get to WrestleMania and kill some time while Steve Austin is gone. And Cactus Jack, or Mick Foley, I should say, agreed. And they started the whole thing, I think, back in December on Monday Night Raw. There was like a pink slip on a pole match or something like that. And this was when Stephanie and Triple H were really abusing their power. They fired Mick Foley on live TV. The Rock wound up having to do something on Raw, like hold Triple H and Stephanie hostage in order to get them to reinstate Mick Foley. And I think there was another match on Raw, and that's when Triple H did the really gnarly pedigree to Mick Foley on the announce table, where just a sideways diagonal gash went right across the face of Mick Foley. He must have caught his face on a sharp piece of wood or one of the TV monitors or something. One of the sickest, bloodiest moments in Raw history, or in WWE history in general, that I can remember. And that's when they started, building to the whole Cactus Jack reveal, because there was blood all over Mick Foley's face. He took off the Mankind mask. Triple H looked a little bit spooked by that, and I think it was the next night, or whenever they were taping SmackDown at the time, a couple days later, when Mankind said that, hey, after the beating you gave me on Monday Night Raw, there's no way I'm ready to face you in a street fight for the title at Royal Rumble, but I know somebody who is. And that's when he takes off the Mankind mask, rips off the shirt to reveal a black Cactus Jack t-shirt underneath. Triple H sells it marvelously. His jaw literally hits the ground, and then the brawl is on, and it was just an amazing build, and I loved the video packages for title matches back then. This was so awesome and so well done and so well put together that I remember they had me fooled. WWE fooled me. When I was doing my predictions for this pay-per-view back then, I thought for sure that Cactus Jack was going to win the WWE title. Boy, was I wrong. They really used this match to help cement Triple H as a main player, and I don't know why I didn't see it coming. I mean, the writing was on the wall. They were really pushing Triple H hard, and Cactus Jack was just an opponent for him. It was just a feud. That was it. Some of that is a shame. I think that they could have given Cactus Jack the WWE title for 1 month. Much like they did the previous year. Mick Foley in 99 won the title from The Rock, dropped it back at the Royal Rumble, and they traded the belt a couple of times, but Mick Foley's run was never long. They could have done the same thing here. they could have had Cactus Jack win the WWE title and then have Triple H challenge him to a Hell in the Cell title versus career match or something like that. Triple H could have found a way to dupe Cactus Jack into putting not only the WWE title on the line, but his career on the line as well. So I thought it would have been cool if Cactus Jack at least would have held that belt for a month, but whatever. This match was still just a beautiful, brutal brawl, and it was bloody as hell. Triple H gets injured pretty early on in this match. They are brawling all the way out into the crowd. They wind up coming back. They're brawling in the aisleway there, and Mick Foley finds like a wooden pallet that's all broken and jagged and gives Triple H a suplex on it. And when he lands on it, his calf, I guess, gets poked by the wood. And Triple H has got just a nasty gash right in the back of his leg. And he had to work the whole match like that. Both of these guys just beat the hell out of each other. One of my favorite spots of the match is when they kind of protected Triple H. And I remember we were all watching this pay-per-view and we all said the same thing. It was so obvious what WWE was doing here. The first thing they did is have Mick Foley retrieve a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire from underneath the ring. Triple H is able to stop the attack and take the bat from Mick Foley and start nailing Cactus Jack with the barbed wire bat, and you can see the barbed wire sticking to the t-shirt of Mick Foley, and even the top of the barbed wire bat is all kind of mangled and is coming undone. It's basically like falling apart. Finally, when the bat hits the ground, the referee grabs it to get it out of the ring, and for some reason, he goes and hands it to the Spanish commentary guys. He gives it to like Hugo Siminovich or something like that. I don't know why. Puts it behind the announce table. Mick Foley comes to. He starts demanding to know and threatening to kill the referee, I believe it's Earl Hebner, if he does not tell him where that baseball bat is. And Earl Hebner is like, fine, it's on the outside of the ring behind the announce table. So Cactus jumps out of the ring, goes over to the announce table, makes them give him the bat back. But when he grabs the bat, it's different. It's a completely different bat. They basically traded bats. Kind of like on TV, whenever Elias is involved in any sort of a segment with his guitar, if he's playing the guitar, you notice they always swap out the guitar before he bashes somebody over the head with it. You know, he'll run to the backstage area and go behind the curtain and come back, you know, to hit somebody with a guitar that's now just been replaced with the balsa wood version. Well, they hide this barbed wire bat under the announce table so they can give the protected bat back to Mick Foley, and he can use that on Triple H. So Mick Foley took the real barbed wire shot to the body, but when it was Triple H's turn, they had gimmicked the barbed wire or put little rubber stoppers on the razor blades. I don't know what the hell they did, but Cactus Jack winds up nailing Triple H right in the face with it, and Triple H was preparing his blade during the whole where is the baseball bat debacle with the referee and Cactus Jack and the Spanish announce guys. That whole time, Triple H is getting ready for the blade job, and as soon as he gets hit with that fake barbed wire bat, he just juices big time from ear to ear. Cactus Jack is just destroying Triple H's face, mangling Triple H's face with that barbed wire bat, and it was still great. I mean, it was still an awesome spot, but everybody in my house that night, we knew that they traded out bats, and we knew that shit wasn't real, but it was still a really great spot. They also had a couple of really crazy table bumps in this match. I think they spill out to JR and King's table, and Cactus is attempting to pile drive Triple H on the table. He backdrops Cactus Jack over the top. The table splits in the middle. Later on, when they're back in the ring, Triple H has a chair in his hand, and he is wearing out Cactus Jack with that steel chair. And at one point, he hits him so hard that a piece of the chair flies off and like flies into the crowd. If you watch it back, it flies right into the entranceway and almost hits a couple of fans. You just got steel breaking off a chair and flying through the air. That's how hard Triple H hit Cactus with that damn thing. And then he busts out the handcuffs. Second year in a row, we have to worry about these fucking handcuffs and a Mick Foley match. The year before this, Rock handcuffed Mankind and just bashed him about 150 times in the head with a chair. Now Triple H is doing the same thing to Cactus Jack. Cactus Jack is completely helpless as Triple H is kicking his ass while he's handcuffed. He falls on the outside of the ring and starts crawling into the aisleway again. And as Triple H is assaulting Cactus Jack in the aisleway, that's when, out of nowhere, The Rock shows up. The Rock shows up with a chair, bashes Triple H over the head with it, and he brings a cop with him who's got the handcuff keys, and he frees Cactus Jack. So luckily, we did not have to watch poor Mick Foley get his brain scrambled for the second year in a row. Cactus Jack is now free from the handcuffs. He's back on the offensive, and that's when he busts out. You knew it was coming, the big bag of thumbtacks. You knew we weren't going to have a Cactus Jack street fight in Madison Square Garden without thumbtacks. That was almost a given. So the thumbtacks are now dumped inside of the ring, and as usual with poor Mick Foley, every time he brings out these tacks, he's generally on the receiving end of them, and Triple H is able to avoid the thumbtacks himself, and that's when Cactus charges Triple H, and Triple H backdrops Cactus right onto the tacks, and then brings him over and nails him with a pedigree for the 1, 2, and a kick out. Cactus Jack kicks out, crowd goes nuts. I remember standing up in my living room saying, okay, this is it. You gotta make a comeback here, Cactus. You gotta make a comeback. This is it. You're gonna win the title. And as soon as he kicked out of that pedigree, Triple H picks up Cactus Jack, gets him in position for another pedigree, and this time nails him face first on the tacks. My God, still ranks as the gnarliest thumbtack bump I can ever remember. Cactus Jack had tacks sticking in his forehead, and just the sound of him hitting the tacks, the collective holy shit moment completely stunned the crowd. They all just screamed in horror in unison when Cactus Jack's face hit those thumbtacks. And I remember I couldn't believe it. It was just one of the craziest bumps. I mean, I know the Hell in the Cell, off the top of the cell, that's the more spectacular bump. Visually, that's the one that looks the best. But when you're going face first onto thumbtacks, that's no fucking joke. And it hit me in that moment. As soon as that pedigree was hit on the tacks, I was like, how did I not see this coming? How did I not understand that Cactus Jack was merely an opponent for Triple H to get past, for Triple H to defeat in order to increase his stock as a legitimate world champion in WWE. That was a great fucking match. And the minute that pedigree was hit, he rolls over Cactus, Earl counts the 1, 2, 3, and Triple H retains the title. It was nuts. By this point, Stephanie had also made an appearance because Stephanie accompanied Triple H to the ring, but he sent her back. So she wasn't at ringside for the whole match until the very end. She showed up there at the end just in time to see the finish, and the look on her face told a pretty good story too. But eventually, after the match, Cactus Jack would get up. Triple H is being carried away on a stretcher, but Cactus Jack attacks Triple H in the aisleway and continues the assault in the ring and winds up leaving on his feet, walking out of the ring with his music playing, but he did not win the WWE title. So kind of bittersweet there. Really, really good match. Still to this day, probably my favorite Royal Rumble WWE title match of all time. And that's saying something. We've had some good ones like Benoit and Angle, like Cena and Umaga, and plenty of other examples, but still, this one ranks number one on my list. Fabulous match. Always fun to go back and take a look at this thing. And I know I've talked about this match in previous years. I've talked about this match several times in Q&As, and you guys know how highly I think of this match. And to me, it was one of Mick Foley's best moments. Yes, he didn't win the WWE title, but still, to be involved in this title match, in that environment, in that setting, as Cactus Jack in Madison Square Garden, putting on a show that we'll never forget, to me, that's worth almost as much as a world title victory. So my hat's off to Foley, and my hat's off to Triple H too, because at this time, Triple H, at least in the dirt sheets, at least by the IWC didn't exist back then, but the people that would have been considered the IWC back then weren't really talking about Triple H as like a hardcore badass. And yes, he did take the fake barbed wire baseball bat bump and all of that, but still, Triple H could wrestle hardcore if he had to, and this was the first time that we really saw that. And after this night, I had a whole newfound respect for Triple H. I just thought the guy worked his ass off. I pretty much became a full-blown believer of Triple H as a main eventer after this match. This was the match that did it for me and made me realize what a true badass Triple H really is. Moving on now to the main event, the Royal Rumble match. Like I said earlier, this was not even one of my favorite Royal Rumble matches in history. I thought this one was somewhat predictable when you look at the field and when you look at what the direction was likely going to be heading into WrestleMania. You had The Rock written all over this. It had to be The Rock. There was just nobody else. The only other major contenders in this match was Kane and The Big Show. And when you think of all three of those guys, it's just got to be The Rock. So from the word go here, I was thinking it was going to be The Rock. All my friends thought it was going to be The Rock. And I think we've definitely seen better Royal Rumbles. But this Royal Rumble was not without a few good moments. We had D'Lo enter at number 1, and we had Grandmaster Sexay coming out at number 2. So those were your first two competitors. They're brawling for a little while. I think Headbanger Mosh winds up coming out and somebody else. And then Rikishi comes out at number 5. And Rikishi goes on a tear. He eliminates like 6 people in total. He eliminates Mosh, Christian, D'Lo Brown, leaving him in the ring all alone with Grandmaster Sexay. And this was actually one of my favorite Royal Rumble moments in history because Grandmaster Sexay is in there all alone with Rikishi being like, oh shit, is my buddy going to toss me over the top rope? But it's time for another entrant to come out. So the 10 count hits, goes all the way down to 1, buzzer goes off, and this time it's Scotty 2 Hotty. So you have 3 men in the Rumble in total, 2 Cool and Rikishi, and of course, the lights go out and they start dancing. Great little dance session with all 3 of them there, very entertaining, and then Scotty and Grandmaster take kind of a step forward close to the ropes, and that's when Rikishi just clotheslines them both to the mat, picks them both up by their head, and tosses them like 2 sacks of garbage right over the top rope and eliminates his 2 buddies. He would then eliminate Steve Blackman and Viscera, who would both hit the ring next. So I think in total it was like 7 guys that Rikishi eliminated. So every year in the Royal Rumble, there's always like one dominant guy that just kicks ass out there. The next year, of course, it would be Kane, tossing out bodies like a madman. But this Royal Rumble belonged to Rikishi. Couple of notable entrants too. We had the British Bulldog coming out at number 11. And when I saw the Bulldog come out, I had kind of forgotten that he was even in this match. And I cannot remember seeing the Bulldog on TV too many times after this. I'm not sure exactly when he left WWE, but I know he came back in late 99 or in like the summer of 99. But by the time we got to early 2000 here, I'm pretty sure he was on his way out. And we also had Bob Backlund coming out at number 14. Now, Bob Backlund at this time was only 5 years, just a little over 5 years removed from defeating Bret Hart at the Survivor Series and winning back the WWE title and dropping it to Diesel in that very building just a couple of days later. You know, and Bob Backlund was out there looking pretty old. He was wearing a pair of red shorts, and it amazes me that it was only 5 years before that he was WWE champion, and in this match he kind of was viewed as a joke. It was funny too, when Bob Backlund got dumped out, he started walking into the crowd to campaign, because I think at that time they were doing the angle where he was running for president or something like that, and that was an election year in the year of 2000, so as soon as Backlund got tossed over the top rope, he started campaigning in the crowd. That was pretty funny. Rikishi would wind up eventually getting eliminated by like 6 guys. Whole bunch of guys ganged up on Rikishi and got him out of there. We had Jericho coming out. He was the one, incidentally, who did toss Bob Backlund out, so I thought that was a nice little feather in Jericho's cap there. Chyna came out a couple of numbers later at number 17. She eliminated Chris Jericho, but got immediately tossed out by the Big Boss Man. And around this time during the match, I even wrote it down because I took notice of it, we had Chyna, British Bulldog, Test, Crash Holly, and the Big Boss Man all in the ring. And all of those wrestlers are deceased, so we had about 5 of them in the ring at one time there, and I was looking at that and I'm like, wow, bothers me so much and just blows my mind how many of these former stars are dead. Another interesting elimination came when the Road Dogg eliminated the Bulldog. So we had a dog eliminating a dog there, which I thought was pretty funny. We finally had The Rock coming out at number 24, so we're nearing the end here already. The crowd goes nuts for The Rock. He's in there kicking ass. So we had the Big Show coming out at number 26, and this Royal Rumble was really centered around the 2 of them. Big Show had recently dropped the WWE title to Triple H. He was starting to turn heel. He might have even been full-blown heel by this point. But he was a babyface a month before when he was feuding with the Boss Man and all of that. But now they're kind of changing directions with the Big Show. And him and The Rock were kind of posturing to win this thing. We had all sorts of extracurricular activity, too, throughout this entire Rumble. We had the Mean Street Posse coming out a couple of times. They attacked both of the Acolytes and caused them to get eliminated. We had Kai and Tai showing up like 3 times because I guess the story was that they were booted from the Royal Rumble. They were bumped, a couple of those guys, for some other competitors instead, and they were pissed about it. So 3 separate times during the Royal Rumble, Kai and Tai showed up. And Taka Michinoku at one point took a really horrific bump over the top rope because every time Kai and Tai would enter the match, they'd be thrown out. And Taka took this really hard fall on the floor below where his head and face basically bounced right off the concrete. And I think at one point during the match, JR was giving us an update on Taka, saying that he was being taken to a hospital, and Jerry Lawler makes some sort of a snide comment like, are there any Chinese hospitals around here? And I almost laughed my ass off when JR told Lawler to stop being so xenophobic. I don't know why I thought that was so funny, but to hear JR call him out for that was crazy. We had Kane coming out at number 28, and the 30th spot went to X-Pac. That was already predetermined. They were talking about that. I can't remember. You guys are going to have to fill me in the comments below. I can't remember what X-Pac did to earn that 30th spot, but he came out there last. And the final four was the Big Show, Kane, The Rock, and X-Pac. Now, X-Pac did get eliminated from the Royal Rumble, but the referees didn't see it, so he was back in there to be a part of the final four. So not a horrible final four. I actually thought it was a pretty interesting final group of guys there. We had Kane actually being eliminated by X-Pac. It was right after Kane body slammed the Big Show. Just an amazing sight, the way he picked Big Show right up. Kane was so fucking strong back then. Picked up the Big Show and slammed him to the mat, and then he immediately eats a spin kick from X-Pac, which causes him to fall backwards over the top rope. He does land on his feet, of course, as the Brothers of Destruction always do, but he is eliminated, and I thought that was interesting, especially what a good showing Kane would have the next year. He was eliminated by X-Pac. This year, pretty crazy. What a difference a year would make. And the Big Show would then just pick up X-Pac and toss him right out, leaving The Rock versus the Big Show as the final two. You know it was going to come down to them, and The Rock won, but not really. The finish saw The Rock being hoisted up on the Big Show's shoulders, and the Big Show is about to dump him right over the top rope. Rock falls over but hangs on to the top rope. Big Show falls to the floor, and The Rock is able to pull himself back up on the ring apron. But I think it was the next night on Raw, because they did not show this at the Royal Rumble. I'm pretty sure this was a botch. They would only show one camera angle during all the replays. They would show the same angle over and over, which does not show you The Rock's feet hitting the floor. But I guess if I remember right, maybe it was so unmistakable they decided to turn it into a storyline the next night on Raw, with the Big Show claiming that he won the Royal Rumble, and I think that's how they eventually got to the big four-way at WrestleMania. That somehow all led to the Big Show being in the title picture there, is the fact that he really did technically win this Royal Rumble. And the show kind of even ended on an odd note as well, because after The Rock has won the match and he's in the ring celebrating, the Big Show comes back. The Big Show hits the ring, attacks The Rock, throws him out of the ring, and The Rock retreats. It was almost like it was reversed. It was almost like Rock was the heel who won in a shady way, and the babyface is coming out to get revenge, but really it was the opposite. But The Rock doesn't get back in the ring to fight the Big Show. He basically just says, yeah, fuck you, I won, and walks out. And that was the end of the show, with the Big Show standing in the ring, pissed off that he was screwed out of a Royal Rumble victory. So kind of an odd finish to the Rumble, and like I said, a pretty predictable one as well. All the signs were pointing to The Rock going into WrestleMania to win the WWE title. I thought that's what they were going to do. Instead, we had that stupid-ass four-way, and Triple H retained, and they would save The Rock's victory for Backlash, when I thought they should have just done it at WrestleMania. Stone Cold Steve Austin is out of the picture. Let The Rock have his big WrestleMania main event title victory moment, and they didn't do it. I don't know what they were thinking. So the undercard is what made this pay-per-view for me. I wouldn't say the Royal Rumble match was boring by any means. It just wasn't one of my favorites of all time. It had its moments. It was still fun at times, and it still had, one of the most over baby faces in WWE history winning this thing, so it's really nothing to complain about. But overall, I think of the debut by Taz in WWE. I think of the great tables match between the Dudleys and the Hardys, and I think of the awesome street fight between Cactus Jack and Triple H for the WWE title, and I also think of the setting. I think of Madison Square Garden. I think of the unique feel and the environment of this pay-per-view, and it's one of my favorites of all time. So what do you guys think about this show? Share all of your memories with me in the comments below. Let me know what you liked and did not like about this pay-per-view. Thanks for sitting through this review with me and taking this trip down memory lane. It is always fun anytime I review any past show, but especially these shows from the Attitude Era, because this was a wonderful time and I miss it dearly. I will catch you guys again here in just a couple of days. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening to this, and I will catch you very soon. Until then, peace.
This has been a Good Mic Work Commentaries production. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/GoodMicWork. Follow Greg Morgan on Twitter at GoodMicWork and visit GoodMicWorkCommentaries.com for all the latest podcast and video content.